In the autumn of 2022, via the veto power bestowed to them from the United Nations, Russia was able to single-handedly block a UN resolution that condemned its annexation of 4 eastern Ukraine regions: Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. If this proposed resolution was passed by the UN Security Council, it would not only have validated the United Nations declaration that Russia's annexation of these 4 regions was illegal, but it would also have granted the necessary legal authority for the United Nations to access a range of tools, which includes economic sanctions or military assistance as a last resort, such as deploying UN peacekeepers inside Ukraine's territory to directly confront Russian forces. Russia's ability to easily dismiss the UN resolution have raised many questions among those who are not familiar with the inner workings of the United Nations. A frequent question that is raised is how can Russia, by itself, easily dismiss a UN resolution that solely focuses on condemning Russia's actions? And on top of this, the resolution was supported overwhelmingly by other member countries of the UN General Assembly. Furthermore, it was extremely baffling to hear many Western political pundits state that despite the UN resolution being blocked by Russia, the mere fact that China elected to abstain and not veto this resolution alongside Russia was actually considered a significant win for Western countries. Therefore, another common question that was raised was why does Communist China possess so much power within the United Nations as well? An overly simplified explanation to all these questions would be that power is not equally shared among member countries within the United Nations. In fact, some countries have immensely more power than others, most notably the following 5 countries: Russia, China, United States, United Kingdom, and France. These 5 countries have the ability to single-handedly veto any significant UN proposed resolution at their discretion because they are the permanent members of the UN Security Council. Of course, this vastly abbreviated explanation will undoubtedly leave inquirers deeply unsatisfied and will produce more questions than answers. So let's dive deeper and explore this topic together in greater detail. Welcome to Regal Compendium. Before we begin, I just want to quickly say that I intend for this video to be part of a multi-part series featuring the topic of geopolitics within the United Nations, especially the current global dynamics between the 2 powerful blocs: the Western Bloc led by the United States, and the Eastern Bloc led by both China and Russia. If you are interested in this topic, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Thanks, let's begin. In order to adequately explain why certain countries, such as Russia and China, have so much power within the United Nations, we must first explore the history of the United Nations, as well as its objectives and inner workings. Second, we'll discuss the shift of permanent membership representation within the UN Security Council, such as when Communist China replaced the Republic of China, or more colloquially referred to Taiwan nowadays, or when the Russian Federation replaced USSR. Lastly, this video will explain the shortcomings of the current United Nations power sharing arrangement, such as unequal representation among different countries, as well as the reform challenges within the UN. The League of Nations was the most notable international organization whose principal mission was to promote world peace and prevent conflict among nations. The League of Nations was established in 1920, shortly after the ending of World War I. At its peak, 63 states were members of the League of Nations. However, the League of Nations failed to prevent major conflicts, such as the Spanish Civil War, the Second Sino-Japanese War, and most importantly, the Second World War. By the end of World War II, the League of Nations was perceived as highly ineffective. Therefore, the United States, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union championed for the creation of a new international body that would replace the League of Nations and would be able to better defend world peace. However, many nations believe that this new organization is intended to discreetly serve as an instrument that advances a new world order heavily favoring the major Allied powers. Nevertheless, on October 24, 1945, the United Nations Charter was ratified and the United Nations was born. The United Nations consists of 6 main bodies. 4 of these bodies are irrelevant in relation to the topic discussed in this video. Therefore, we'll solely focus on 2 key UN bodies, the General Assembly and the Security Council. The General Assembly is the United Nations' main deliberative constituent and is made up of all countries that are members of the United Nations. The General Assembly convenes at least once a year to deliberate and vote on key issues surrounding global peace and security. Moreover, it facilitates discussion and debates among members when a proposed UN resolution is brought forth. Afterwards, the General Assembly then allocates time for member countries to deliberate before voting commences. For a normal resolution to pass, it simply requires a majority. However, if the General Assembly determines that the proposed resolution is of significant importance or formally categorized by the UN as an important question, then at least 2/3 majority is required for the proposed resolution to pass. Examples of proposed resolutions of significant importance usually involve around maintenance of international peace and security, admission of new members to the United Nations, or the expulsion of members. If the proposed UN resolution passes at the General Assembly level, however, the resolution becomes non-binding, and it will then need the approval of the UN Security Council in order for the resolution to be fully implemented. The Security Council is the United Nations' most powerful body, and its primary role is to ensure international peace and security. It has the ability to authorize international sanctions and military action, such as peacekeeping missions. The Security Council is made out of 15 membered countries, in which 5 members are permanent members and the remaining 10 are non-permanent members. The 10 non-permanent members are elected by the General Assembly and can serve a 2-year term. On the contrary, the permanent membership of the Security Council was originally granted to the following 5 states at the inception of the United Nations: the United States, United Kingdom, USSR, the Republic of China, and France. The 5 permanent members are also each given veto power, which can block any resolution passed by the General Assembly that are classified as an important question. After receiving approval from the General Assembly, in order for any proposed UN resolution to become legally binding, the resolution must receive a majority of 9 or more votes that support the resolution out of the 15 Security Council members, as well as no veto votes from any of the 5 permanent members. This is the reason why Russia was able to veto and block the UN resolution condemning its annexation of Ukraine's eastern regions, despite the resolution being overly supported by other members in the General Assembly. According to the UN, the rationale behind bestowing such powers to these 5 states was due to their importance and contributions towards Allied forces' victory in World War II. In addition, the UN also argued that granting veto powers to these 5 states is absolutely necessary because the decision to veto is likely based on the interests of these 5 permanent members, and that peace is only possible if the great powers would work together. However, many critics have pointed out that this arrangement is absolutely unfair to other countries, which we will explore later in this video. Since Communist China was not part of the Allied forces in the Second World War, why does it have a permanent seat in the UN Security Council? As mentioned prior, in 1945, the Republic of China, now commonly referred to as Taiwan, gained a permanent seat on the UN Security Council via the advocacy of the United States because the Republic of China had fought alongside the Allied forces in World War II. However, at the end of the Second World War, civil war immediately resumed in China between the Chinese Communist Party and the Republic of China, led by the Nationalist Party. By the end of 1949, Mao Zedong's Communist Party defeated the Nationalists to fully control mainland China. On the opposite side, Chiang Kai-shek, the leader of the Nationalist Party, ordered the Republic of China to retreat to the island of Taiwan. Chiang firmly believed that the Republic of China would only temporarily station in Taiwan, and that one day his Nationalist Party would defeat the Communists and regain control of mainland China. Nevertheless, the US government absolutely did not foresee the Communists defeating the Nationalists to control all of mainland China when backing the Republic of China's permanent seat on the UN Security Council at the onset of the United Nations inception. When Mao officially established the People's Republic of China on October 1, 1949 in Beijing, the United States refused to recognize the Communist Party as the legitimate government of China. Many countries followed United States' decision, and as a result, the People's Republic of China was heavily isolated from the international community. At the United Nations, the Republic of China held on to its permanent seat in the UN Security Council and was continuing to represent all of China. However, as years passed, the Republic of China's representation of all of China appeared increasingly unjustifiable, as the Republic of China only controlled Taiwan, whose population and landmass are both less than 1% of mainland China's. On top of this, more and more countries started to establish diplomatic relations with Communist China, including the United Kingdom in the 1950s and France in the 1960s. Nevertheless, the United States sought to prevent the Communist bloc from gaining another permanent seat in the UN Security Council. In 1963, when Albania first brought forth a proposed UN resolution to replace the Republic of China with the People's Republic of China, the United States used every method to deter this from happening. A question that has been often asked is why couldn't either the Republic of China or the United States simply veto this particular UN proposed resolution and hence block Communist China from replacing the Republic of China? The answer is that although the UN Security Council have the power to approve the entry of new members or to expel existing members from the UN, however, this particular resolution wasn't to determine the entry of a new member, but rather it was to determine who is the rightful government that represents the entire state of China at the UN. The issue of representation credentials of a state falls under the prerogative of the General Assembly. Henceforth, the Security Council was powerless to veto this particular resolution. A very interesting fact to note is that one proposed solution that the United States heavily endorsed was to allow for both Communist China and the Republic of China to be UN members. However, Chiang Kai-shek refused this solution as he adamantly believes in the One China principle. He rather elect for the Republic of China to leave the United Nations than risk creating the visual optics of two separate Chinas. Nevertheless, Chiang, until his death, continued to advocate that the Republic of China is the legitimate government of all of China and not Mao's communists. In 1971, by a vote of 76 in favor, 35 against, and 17 abstentions, the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 2758 was passed, which officially recognized the People's Republic of China as the only legitimate representative of China to the United Nations and removed the representatives of the Republic of China from the United Nations. The Russian Federation's replacement of the USSR on the UN Security Council was definitely not as contentious or eventful, and appeared rather seamless in comparison to China's shift in representation at the UN several decades earlier. In 1999, the USSR collapsed and its former members, which became independent states, supported the Russian Federation's succession into the USSR's membership at the UN. The Russian Federation was the logical choice for many as the history of the USSR began in Russia. Furthermore, Russia accounted for most of USSR's population and landmass, as well as half of USSR's economy. As a result, 11 of the 12 former members of the USSR signed a declaration to show solidarity in supporting the Russian Federation in taking over the USSR's membership at the UN, including its permanent seat within the UN Security Council. The UN Secretary General circulated this declaration alongside the Russian Federation's official request for succession among all UN members for deliberation. Nevertheless, the Russian Federation's request for succession have been questioned by some international lawyers because of the fact that the UN Charter fails to provide any provision that details the rules for succession in the event that a transcontinental country such as the USSR dissolves. However, the UN nations accepted the Russian Federation's succession request simply because there weren't any objections raised by any members of the General Assembly or the UN Security Council. As a result, the Russian Federation took the USSR's place, with Boris Yeltsin personally taking the Russian Federation's seat at the January 31, 1992 UN Security Council meeting. Since its inception, the United Nations has undoubtedly received its fair share of condemnation. Over the years, critics have identified a plethora of UN shortcomings. The full list is just too long to state in this video, but here are some examples. Shockingly, these examples do not constitute a fraction of the complaints levied at the UN by its critics. Although there is virtual consensus among all UN members that there is a pressing need for reform, however, there's one key reason why significant reform within the United Nations is practically impossible, which by now everyone could easily guess the answer, is the veto power possessed by each of the current 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council. Many critics have rightfully pointed out that the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council is an unjust representation of the global community, as it clearly fails to accurately reflect the true state of global diversity among all nations, especially in today's geopolitical climate. Each of the UN Security Council 5 permanent members have the power to sway decisions based solely in their own self-interest, while all other countries are on the outside looking in. Many have argued this arrangement created in 1945 is completely archaic, especially with the continual decline of United Kingdom and France as global superpowers. Henceforth, the right to veto power looks more and more undefendable. On the other hand, there is strong and legitimate argument that other countries should also be granted veto powers. A prime example would be India, which is predicted that sometime during the next decade, it will surpass China as the country with the largest population in the world. Likewise, in terms of fair representation, other notable facts need to be considered as well. Currently, veto power isn't entrusted to a country located in the continents of Africa, South America, and Australia. Furthermore, powerful industrial countries with large GDPs such as Japan or Germany are also left out as well. Overall, these exclusions truly distort the notion of fair representation for our current global makeup. However, the probability that new countries will be given permanent seat status and entrusted with veto power sometime in the near future doesn't appear promising, to say the least. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to our channel. Thank you and have a wonderful day.